I definitely have a special interest in triathlon, particularly endurance triathlon, Ironman, and that sort of thing, which I think stemmed from being a little kid and watching. I used to live on the New Zealand Ironman course, which used to be in Auckland, and my uncles used to do the Ironman back in the 80s, and I still remember just sitting there as a little kid and just watching how far you guys swam, and just going, that's impossible. Driving for miles to go see my uncles and then watching them run, and I always just loved the Ironman and that sort of thing. I've been sort of dealing with triathletes regularly for the last 10 years and have sort of seen a lot of common patterns and that sort of thing. I really respect particularly endurance stuff, just, that you can go full noise all day, and finish an Ironman in 8 hours or whatever. It's just very impressive. So, and the fact that it bloody costs so much and you're a pro and you earn so little, it's just phenomenal.
But that is a whole nother subject.
I know, God. But anyways, so I know you guys have sort of asked a few questions, and so what I thought I'd do is just answer them in the priority I sort of thought was most important for you guys. So the first question from Chris was, what's the most effective modality, yoga versus Pilates versus weights? And is there any difference between a difference for men or women, older athletes versus younger athletes? And does your body type influence this? I.e., are you hypermobile versus unflexible, stiff? So I would say now, I would answer that differently. And I think the single most important thing you can do is weight training. There is so much awesome evidence that's come out in the last sort of 5 years to show how important it is for triathletes. The first thing that it's really beneficial for is it reduces overuse injuries in runners by up to 50%. And there's some really good studies for that now. So you think about the most common injuries you guys have probably had over the years as a triathlete, they'd be overuse things, right? So if you could reduce that by 50%, it's a no-brainer. The second thing is it can improve your running economy by 5%. So what's that? Let's say 16 seconds over 3K. So over 4 minutes over a marathon. So if you keep losing to the same person by a couple of minutes each time, then it's again pretty important.
You would have to think. Sorry, Matt. That would even more be the case when you think that we're running half marathons and marathons already in a massively fatigued state after 6 hours. 5 hours on the bike, an hour of swimming, or something like that. So that sort of economy gains, even though you sort of say, oh, it's only 5%, whatever. That is huge when you think of the gains that are made with the huge fatigue later on.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is, like, when you're doing a massive training block and you're worried about pain and injury, and you could reduce that risk by 50%, it's a no-brainer.
That's staggering. That is staggering.
Yeah, phenomenal. And then, they did a study on rugby players that sort of said that the stronger you were, the quicker you recovered. Obviously not triathlon related, but something to think about. Mm-hmm. So the big thing is what strengthening in these studies is based on is your 1RM. So how much you could lift once. And what they sort of focus on in terms of strength is 70 to 80% of your 1RM, which means that if you're lifting a weight, you need to be able to fatigue in 8 to 12 reps. So if your version of strength training is a couple of 2 kg weights at home, that's not going to get the gains you need to be a better triathlete. So you want to be hitting that 8th to 12th rep, and you can't do any more.
So you're actually lifting heavy.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, you think 80% of 1RM is actually, that's moving some significant weight.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And then you're doing 3 to 4 sets, and you've got a 2-minute rest between. Okay, so.
And so let's dig into that a little bit more. What are your typical weights? I mean, your compound movements. So you would say, obviously, your squat would be a huge one.
So
deadlifts. What would be your exercises that you would say, if you were to sort of narrow it down to say 4 to 6 exercises, would that be within the realm of what you'd be thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd break it down into Because I mean, let's be honest, the majority of injuries are going to come from running, followed by probably cycling and a little bit, swimming. That's generally what you see in triathlon. So
Yep.
if you think about the gait cycle of running, you've got your glutes, your quads, your hamstrings, and your calf. Now, there's two particular muscles that you will see that take. If you're running, most muscles take 2 times your body weight. But your glute med, so one of your butt muscles on the side that stabilizes your hip and stops it from moving, takes 4 times your body weight, and your short calf, so your soleus, takes 6 times your body weight. So you've got to have some stuff to really beef up your glute med and some stuff to beef up your soleus, so your short calf.
Which is why we see, if we're going, I mean, I know in my experience, if I'm going to get an athlete that's going to pull up injured during a session, 80% of the time, it is going to be a calf.
Yeah. And 80% of what is it, like 90% of calf tears are your short calf. So,
yes, right.
In order to strengthen that, what you need to do is there's 2 ways. You could go to the gym and do a seated calf raise. You know, those old school machines, they're bloody good for triathletes. Second way is just do a standing calf raise with a bent knee. And it's interesting, like with triathletes, you see a lot of Achilles issues. And when you try and get someone to a bent knee calf raise, they can't. They just go straight to lock their knee and then do the calf raise. So that's your soleus, your glute med. They've done some all right studies on, what exercises give you the most bang for your buck. And so your glute med, a side plank, your single leg squat and single leg deadlift.
Right.
So, and I mean, with a single leg deadlift do you guys know what I mean with a single leg deadlift? Does everyone okay with that?
I've got some resources that I can chuck to them. I'll be putting up after this a whole bunch of resources, and I might even, if you do have some of those studies that you do mention, if you've got them handy, that you can chuck them through to me in an email.
Yeah, cool.
Some of the guys, like obviously you'll have Laura Brown that'll read every single study that we see through, and then she'll critique it. Then she'll send you back an email about all the and then you'll have other people that'll just go, look, just tell me what to do. But as a resource, I would love to see those studies.
Yeah, cool.
And some of the other guys do really get into it, so that'd be great.
Yeah, so glute med, I keep focusing on this because it's such an important muscle. So if you're doing a single leg deadlift, holding a kettlebell on the opposite side. So if you're doing your right side, hold a weight or a kettlebell on the other side as you do the deadlift, and you'll feel it. It's going to be hard to get to sort of 8 reps. It's just such a good exercise. So I mean, that is your soleus and your glute med. Hamstrings, you've got your old school curl, but you really need a good sort of bridge where your back is on like a weight bench, and then your feet are on the ground, and you've got heavy weights around your pelvis, and you're bridging up from there. And kettlebell swings are really good as well. And then old school leg presses are really good as well for your quads. I find they're really effective. Calm down kneecap, patellofemoral kneecap stuff, those sort of things.
Great.
So I guess going back to, obviously triathletes are time poor. You're trying to fit, 3 different sports effectively into your week, and then you're buggered. So if you're super time poor, that's what I would recommend. But there is a couple of caveats. And the first thing is, if you are hypermobile, which means that you are effectively a lot more flexible than most people. So if you were one of those kids at school that was way more flexible than all your peers, not just way more flexible, one of the most flexible, I would consider you hypermobile, and that includes guys as well. So if you're a lot more flexible than your mates at school, you're probably hypermobile. If you can bend your thumb all the way back, unlike me, and hyperextend your elbows and knees, you're hypermobile. In that scenario, I would strongly encourage you to think about doing 1 Pilates class a week, or maybe 2. The reason for that is your ligaments move more than most people, so your postural stabilizing core muscles, which are throughout your spine, have to work a lot harder than, say, mine do. And so as a result, they're more prone to fatigue. And I'll give you a classic. You don't mind if I talk about you, Laura, do you? Laura is a classic example Laura's hypermobile and a very, very good triathlete. And I can tell if she's done Pilates. I can tell if she's done 3-4 sessions in a row, her mechanics are amazing. And if she hasn't, for a lot of the reasons to do with the trainer or whatever, I can tell when she's not doing it. So if she's got a big block of training before a race, it's mandatory. It's one of the most important things that stops her getting injured. So that's a hypermobile person. And then what I would recommend is that you go to someone that knows what they're doing rather than just your boot camp type Pilates scenario. Like, I'm going to push our business, Balance in Motion, in the city. We've got a really good Pilates team. If you're in the CBD, if you work in Sydney City, Naomi, who is Laura's, is really, really good. So yeah, that's what I would say is go to someone that knows how to move you properly rather than just a boot camp type style. And then the final part of that is if you are super unflexible like myself, I would encourage you, and you feel like it's affecting your performance, I'd encourage you to consider a yoga class a week. The other reason I would recommend yoga if you've got time is that if you're going through a really intense block of training and you're working your ass off at work, doing long hours, your body is getting pretty smashed, and it's a good way to relax, get your body released, and reset and recover a bit faster. So I hope I haven't confused anyone there. Your main priority is strength and conditioning. Unless you're hypermobile, do Pilates. And if you're super unflexible or getting smashed at work, I would chuck in a yoga class. But I mean, the beauty of this whole COVID thing is there's lots of on-demand type classes as well in yoga. I use a guy who's in Bondi called Andrew Hansen, Bad Yogi or something like that. And he's got some awesome, like 15 to 30 minute classes if you're time poor. If you want the link, just email me, nick@balanceinmotion.com.au. So I think I might stop there just because I know that can be a bit confusing. If anyone has like any questions in terms of what would be better for them or whatever, fire away. Laura?
Yeah, I've got a comment. So, Ian, or Hemo, some people would call him hypermobile. And when we do Pilates together, even though you sort of say I'm hypermobile, my muscles and stuff are a lot tighter than him. So I think when he moves, he's got a lot more range in all his joints and shoulders and everything like that. So do you have anything to say in terms of how like being sort of tight in muscles differs to hypermobility? Because I think there can be a bit of confusion there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it comes back to those sort of ligament laxity tests, like.
Because I can do that.
Yeah.
I can get my thumb on that.
Yeah.
But then my hamstring length and my mobility in my shoulders is not great because I'm tight.
Yeah, but that's why I also recommend like you go back to when you were a kid. And if you were one of those kids, you're an academic, you do it, there's a whole lot of reasons why you're probably stiff at the moment. You're working from home. But I mean, if you go back to when you're a kid, and I'm sure you were probably one of the most flexible in your class, right?
Yeah, I could do stuff, but not now.
No. But back then, back in the good old days.
When I was young,
Yeah. Any other questions? Where is Hemo? Why is he not?
It's his birthday and he's out with family.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Okay, so.
Sorry, Nick, I posted one in the chat, but.
Oh, sorry, I'm just shipping
No, that's okay. And it was more about, it's nicely surprising that you are saying that weight work is really important.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming that you probably also mean that it still needs to be done under guidance, right? Just don't go and lift more than your weight.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't, you should absolutely get a program constructed by someone that knows what they're doing, or at least just get your form checked, even if it's just once. But once they're fairly straightforward exercises to get started. I just don't want to put too many barriers in the way to just getting getting started, because I know how busy you are during your weeks in terms of training, like, you know, the amount you have to do. So yeah, if you can see a good personal trainer or exercise physiologist would probably be your gold standard for this sort of stuff. Or your physio if you're recovering from injury. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a good point.
Thanks.
What's the next one you'd like to tackle, mate?
What have we got? What is more important, flexibility or strength? Well, I've kind of sort of answered that, but so strength wins that hands down. But what I would say in terms of stretching is a couple of points. The first thing is if you warm up by stretching, you know, like static stretching, 30, 40 seconds, I'm not huge on it, because what it does is lengthen the muscle and weaken it at the same time. And then you're about to exercise. So we're going away from that sort of style of warm up to a more dynamic style of warm up, if you warm up at all. Like a lot of people go out and run, and that's fine as well. But if you prefer a warm up, don't just sit there and stretch. Try some dynamic stuff like some running drills, leg swings, you know, mobility stuff, that sort of thing. And then the second thing is, like, if you are feeling really stiff and you are unflexible, stretch at night while you're in front of the TV. Like, you know, that go and do that. That's important. I know I've harped on about strength, but if you are inflexible, go and stretch 30, 45 seconds, you know, every night. And don't forget your upper body, because you guys swim a lot, and your upper body will absolutely affect your lower body. So don't just sit there and do your calf, your hammy, your quad, your glutes. Do your upper body. That's really important. Pecs, lats, all that stuff.
I think one of the things I like to get the guys to do, particularly older guys that are going to be super inflexible, is to do a fair bit of foam rolling before they start their stretching as well, just as like a good,
yeah, absolutely.
Go across the muscle, go the length of the muscle, those sort of things. You know, the length of the spine, while just keeping everything sort of set. And I find the foam rolling will just get them, even if they do that. And a little often is the other thing that I'm sort of quite on about. 10 minutes a night in front of the TV watching the news. You know, you don't even have to put your glass of wine down to do it effectively a lot of times, which is, that's a skill in itself that if you could do.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing is don't forget the front of your body. Like, you think about being in the time trial position, your pecs get tight, your abs get tight. You know, so you got to get a spiky ball into your chest, loosen up all of that sort of thing. So don't just roll the back, you know, think about releasing stuff at the front, because of, you know, I mean, it's such an aggressive position to be doing. And then you go to work all day and do this, you know what I mean? So don't just do the back, do the front as well.
I think one of the best ones you taught me was with a lacrosse ball lying on your stomach, breathing deeply. I think we were releasing the obliques from memory. And I found that, first of all, just the awareness of that, of how tight that was, that you don't really, because they're so deep, you don't really have that awareness that they're on. But the release that you got, maybe just speak briefly about that, because I think all these guys would probably have the similar sort of thing as well. I had that.
Well, I mean, it's very rare that you would see a triathlete without a really stiff rib cage through the middle, because this is the attachment of all your abdominal muscles. And you know, you think about the time trial position, you're just sitting in this ridiculous position for hours on end. Like, what's the average time you finish a 180K bike ride in?
The good guys will be just under 5 hours, and it sort of drifts anywhere from 5 to 6 hours. So even the fastest guys are there for a long time, and potentially doing worse because they're in a far more aggressive position, putting through far more power. Whereas the slower guys, at least they'll come up, they'll relax, they're drinking a lot more, they're up a lot more.
So I mean, it's such an extreme, it's like you're doing this insane sit-up for hours on end, and then you're supposed to kind of get your abdominal wall to stretch out and then go and run a marathon. Like it's, you know, so if you're doing, you think of your training blocks and how much riding you're doing, and then you're trying to run well with good technique, getting in there and stretching your abdominal wall, your back extensors, you know, getting the spiky ball into your abdominal muscles. Obviously, if something's super tender and you feel like you're on an organ, don't go there. But the lower part of your pelvis is pretty safe. Up around your ribs here, not on the ribs, but just below is a nice place to just release those ab muscles. But yeah, that is a huge problem with triathletes. Yeah.
I personally, I found that probably one of the most beneficial exercises that you ever gave me. And again, it gets back to this very, very simple thing that you can do at home. It takes you're lying on the carpet, for crying out loud, just with a ball there, just working on your breathing. And the benefit to doing that sort of stuff regularly is huge.
Yeah, and I mean, then you can finish off with, like, do you guys know Cobra Pose, where you arch back and stretch out your abdominal wall? That's a really nice one. Or just lying on your back over a Swiss ball, so you stretch out your tummy, but just don't jam your back up too much because you'll end up with back pain. But I find that's a nice little combo as well.
Jamie's question's quite good, mate, in the chat. Do you recommend those massage guns, the Theraguns? You know what I'm...
Yeah, they're cool. I mean, I've only just started playing around with them. Interestingly, I've seen a few injuries from them already, but
probably of guys hitting onto bone, right? Like, I see these guys pound all the way around the knee, and I'm just like, oh my god.
I mean, it's a pretty aggressive massage, right? And you're just bashing into flesh. So I think, like, it definitely, I think they're awesome, and as long as you're doing it once every couple of days, like, I find if you're sitting bashing yourself morning and night, you're just going to get bruised tissue and it's no good. But yeah, they're cool. Like, I definitely think around the upper part of your abs would be awesome. Just stay away from your ribs and that sort of thing. Yeah, absolutely. I need to play around with them more.
I can't see any difference to what it's doing than what a foam roller would do. Would that be right?
Yeah, but I guess going back to your point with the wine glass, it's definitely more.
It's definitely Right, I'll rush out and get one then. Fair enough. Perfect.
Yeah. So, getting back to the next one was, do you use ice or heat? So, I think that's a really good question. And one of the things that happens is I get calls a lot from triathletes that have gone and pulled their calf and don't know what to do, or rolled their ankle and freaking out. So I think what I'd like to do is just sort of answer what you should do. And I mean, a lot of it will be common sense, but we have changed. Like, the acronym we used to use is RICE, and we've changed that to police now. And so I just want to run through that, because I think that will really, if you do get yourself injured, that's really, really useful. So the first thing is protection. So if you have, let's say you've run out and you've felt a pull in your calf and you are hobbling home, the most important thing to do is literally to go home for the next 2 days and just chill out and not do much. The reason being is that there's no scar formation during that time. So what you can do, if you go race round, go to work, walk around, go and clock up 10,000 steps, you're actually opening the scar more. And why, so what you're doing is, you're essentially setting yourself back. So that first 48 hours, do nothing, chill out on the couch, work from home, do whatever you can. Same with a sprained ankle. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, optimal loading. What that means is that after you have injured yourself and it's not broken, but you've torn a muscle or sprained a ligament or whatever, what you need to do is you need to load it. That's how they get better. And what optimal loading means is just not being stupid and doing 10,000 steps. It's loading it enough so there's a bit of load going through there without stirring it up too much. And I mean, obviously at that stage, you're working with a physio to figure out what is good and what's bad. But like, the worst ankle sprains you see as a physio are those people that jumped on crutches for 4 weeks and didn't load it. And it's just a real headache to get right. Whereas those people that kind of got on with it to some extent, with it, protected and loading it safely, do a lot better and a lot faster. Which brings us to that final piece of the ice compression elevation. And I mean, ice is, like, there's mixed evidence. Some people say it's a waste of time, whatever, but it's good pain relief. And in these scenarios when you've just hurt yourself, do not take Voltaren and do not take Nurofen. And the reason for that is it messes with the scar response. So the amount of people that take Voltaren after they've torn their calf or sprained their ankle, everyone does it, but don't do it, because it delays the scarring. So if you're in pain, use ice or use Panadol, but don't use Voltaren. And then compressing it with, say, tuba grip or old school bandage or whatever, or those, compression tights, do that. do that. Probably do that for the first week, and obviously don't sleep with that on, but definitely do it during the day, and then elevate. And what elevate means is not just chucking your foot on a chair. It means lying on your back with your leg on 2 or 3 pillows and just letting it drain. So yeah, I mean, shit, I can't think of too many things I hate anymore, you know, like but I think the key take home point is that if that happens to you, follow that. Don't do anything for a couple of days, compress it, load it, unless you think it's broken, load it, but just do it sensibly. Does that make sense? Is everyone happy with that?
Very much so. That was conclusive. I love it.
All right. So
from Claire, a question, what do you suggest for a neck? I've usually used heat as it feels safe. So a heat pack around the neck.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. Neck, like a neck sprain or something's a bit of a different one. It's a good point that, I mean, that's something where I would consider using anti-inflammatories if it's incredibly painful. So anti-inflammatories being Voltaren or Nurofen. That's normally you've woken up and you're like, oh shit, I can't turn my neck, that sort of thing. It's more like a sustained posture over time. Different sort of scenario. Yeah, you can use heat for that if you want. Just getting it to move safely and stretching it is also good as well. Yeah, no, good. I'm thinking more like you're out training, something happens. That's what you do. Okay. Next question was, what are the most effective recovery strategies? If we're talking about, let's say you've got a goal race coming up and you've got, let's say 2-3 races beforehand, your lead up races, the best thing you can do after the race is, and what the elite athletes are doing, like at the Swans and places like that, is they try and get their athletes to have up to sort of between 10 to 15 hours of sleep in that first 48 hours. They're aggressive, like the Swans go 15 hours for the first 48 hours. So, I mean, obviously you're not going to do 15 hours in a row, so that comprises of a couple of naps during the day as well. But there's a lot of research behind more effective recovery with getting more sleep in that first 2 days after you've absolutely pushed yourself in a race. What else? The other thing I was going to talk about is, the other thing with racing is you're normally in a hotel room. Well, not always, but I mean, most of the time you travel for a race, and with that comes air conditioning and sore throats and that sort of thing. So if you can, what I'd recommend is, what was I talking about? If you can open the windows. But if you can't, have like a hot shower before you go to bed and first thing in the morning, so you can use the vapor to just clear your throat, because there's nothing worse than going into a big race and you got a sore throat and things from the race. So that's the first thing. So lots of sleep. And then if we look at this in terms of recovery after a big weekend of training, ice baths are really, really good. But a lot of admin. So, if you can't be bothered going and doing an ice bath, which you recommend about 10 minutes in that, go and jump in the nearest cold pool, winter or summer, up to about here, so nipple height. And the reason for that is it stimulates your lymphatic system via osmotic pressure, so it pumps all the waste out more effectively. So literally just walk around in a pool for about 10 minutes after a hard session on the weekend, and that's awesome. Big fan of compression tights, so you can pop those on afterwards as well to help stimulate that lymphatic system.
What about those compression boots like Normatec and
awesome.
I mean, if you want to throw money at it, obviously.
Yeah. Because I mean, anything that's going to get your lymphatic system, which is how you get rid of waste and all the products that accumulate from training, go for it. But I'm just trying to think like the least amount of effort. Go to the nearest pool, jump in that for 10 minutes, walk around, chuck your tights on, and then it's really important. Like I suppose I've underestimated how important sleep is in terms of recovery. Like it's probably the most important thing. So if you're sitting there on a Saturday and you've got a massive session on a Sunday and you're mucking around on your phone at 11 o'clock at night, it's just it's just insane. So put your phone in flight mode, go to bed at 9:30, 10. Put your flight mode on an hour before, read a book, have a bath, whatever, anything that's going to get you that 8 hours, so that when you hit 5:30 or whenever you're training in the morning, you've got that 8 hours. And I think that's enough on recovery. Like if you do those, you're doing pretty well. Any questions on that?
Right.
Cool. Okay. So what's the best practices for desk-bound athletes? The first thing I'd say with that is that when you're at work and you're doing this all day, that is a load on your body. And a lot of people forget you're actually contracting your muscles, with your pecs and things for hours and hours on end. And if your body is used to doing, let's say, 8 hours of work a day, and then all of a sudden you're getting smashed at work and you're doing 12 hours a day, that's an increase in load. So your muscles are going to be tighter and stiffer, which means you're going to train less effectively. And then you combine that with a tough block of training, then you're getting smashed. And in that scenario, you need to look at massages, more foam rolling than normal, yoga, that sort of thing. Like you need to go, okay, if I keep going at this path, I'm going to get injured, and you need to address that and put more of that release stuff in your program. So what Chris was saying with foam roller, if you get massages, get more of those during that time. So just be conscious that your body should be sweet if you do the same amount of hours each day. If you're doing way more and you're stressed at work, you need to be conscious that that's an increase in load on your body. Second part of that is a lot of us are working from home these days, so you've got to optimize your sitting as much as you can. And the way to think about it is to be as lazy as you can. So if you can roll up a towel and put it in the small of your back, lean slightly back in your chair and use your chair so you're not overloading your muscles, then that's really effective. Bringing the keyboard as close as you can to your body, so you're not getting into that time trial type position. I've got some great videos on our balanceemotion.com.au website. If Chris wants to share those with you, I can email them to him.
Excellent.
But,
on that, whilst I remember also, if you are on Facebook, guys, follow Nick's the Balance in Motion Physio Facebook page, because those guys put up some great videos all the time about just little things. There was the calf video that one of your guys put up with you putting a kettlebell on your leg and those sort of things was brilliant. A brilliant video to help strengthen soleus and gastroc and stuff like that.
Yeah. No, that was he's great, James. So he does a lot. Like in terms of Pilates, I find him really, really good at constructing an awesome program for triathletes and runners.
Yeah, really informative. Frankie's just asked, she sits on a yoga ball or a Swiss, I'm assuming that's a Swiss ball, at her desk all day. Is that bad?
I don't know. How do you feel, Frankie?
I feel fine about it, but I've been told that you should never do it more than an hour a day. And I'm like, why?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't, like, it's not something I'm massive on, because you're kind of gripping and stabilizing all day. But there's no evidence to tell you not to. And if you feel fine and you feel good from doing it, who cares? I mean, like you're telling someone to only do it an hour a day, but that's your own opinion. You know what I mean? It's not evidence-based. So if you feel fine,
if it was, evidence-based. I didn't ask them.
Nah, but I mean, like, honestly, if you feel fine and it's not affecting your training, or you feel like it's helping your training and your body doesn't feel sore from doing it, just keep doing it.
Coach, maybe that's what is affecting my training.
Yes. Let's add that to the list. Question from Jamie: using a standing desk to break up the load. That's obviously going to be a good thing if you've got one of those desks.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're trying to get out of that position. But the big thing with, like, you see just as many injuries from people that stand all day as you do people that sit all day. So it's really important to sort of break that up. Like if you're using your standing desk and then all of a sudden you start feeling tired, and then you start turning into shitty posture, that's not good. So then I would recommend you sit down and then sit well. And when you feel like you're sitting badly, stand up again. So don't just use it as a standing desk all day. Sit, stand, sit, stand, sit, stand. I hope that makes sense. And when you are standing, try and think about standing well as opposed to just kind of leaning forward and hunching over. But yeah, standing desks are awesome as long as you can modify them to sit down as well.
Great.
I think that's all the questions. So if anyone has more questions or want to talk about other stuff or whatever, just hit me. I've got nothing else to do.
7 more days, mate. 7 more days. Well, guys, unmute yourself. Obviously, it's over to you. You can either put in the chat and I can put it through for you, or if there's anything personally that you've personally had to do, you've got a world-class physio here at your fingertips to ask your own questions. So